In this video, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be starting to put together a Mars weather app. When it's all said and done, it should look a little bit something like this right here. We're going to be doing a lot of different things with it. We're using CSS Grid for a lot of the layout. We're using a ton of custom properties. We're using some animation keyframes in here. We're doing all sorts of cool stuff. A lot of fun. This one was a ton of fun for me to build, so let's go take a look at how we did it. Hi there, my name is Kevin and welcome to my channel where we learn how to make the web and how to make it look good with weekly tips, tricks, and tutorials. Been looking a lot at design stuff recently and we're back into it in a big way with the HTML and CSS. And even more fun, I am doing this in collaboration with Kyle over at Web Dev Simplified. You might remember we did a collaboration a little while ago. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people really liked it with a cool to-do app. And in this one, we're doing a Mars weather app. Just the collab that's going to be going on is I'm creating the HTML and CSS. I'm doing all the layout. I'm doing all of the fun stuff. And then Kyle's doing all the hard stuff with the JavaScript to make it actually work. So he's linking in, we found the API for this. So he's grabbing their API to bring all of the information and feed it in there. But first, I'm building everything out. And this one took me a while to do. I didn't realize how big of an undertaking it would be. So I am splitting this one up across several videos. In this one, we're just going to be focusing on the HTML, setting up the structure of it, getting all the structure in place. So in the next couple of videos, we can actually build out the different elements that are in there. You'll notice there is one point during the video where I'm going to interrupt with future Kevin coming in to fix a mistake that I did. You won't really see the mistake, but anyway, you'll see it when you get there. It has to do with the toggle switch. I did the toggle switch in a bad way, so I redid it in a good way before, when I realized that I'd made that mistake. That's enough talk though. You want to see how to make a Mars weather app, so let's jump into it. All right, so here we are ready to get started on this. I am here in VS Code. As you can see, I've set up a very basic just starting point here. So I'm linking off to the Google fonts that I did use in this design. I'm linking to my CSS file and I've set up a little JavaScript file there as well, which I won't be touching. That will be Kyle's job to be doing. But I've set it up so it is there for him to get started to save him, 5 seconds of time. You will notice I have this as an SCSS file, so this is going to be compiled into regular CSS. I'm going to be writing this using Sass, or SCSS more specifically. I'm not going to do anything crazy though, nothing too complicated. It's mostly for nesting purposes, and I'm sure you'll be able to follow along, because again, I'm not going to go into creating mix-ins or doing anything too complicated. But if you want, there is the link to the Github Repo down below, so you can go to there and actually get the direct code, and it will include the compiled CSS. So if ever there's something that I do that's not too clear, and you want to see how it looks when it's regular CSS, you should have no trouble whatsoever in finding that. Now, the fun part is trying to make this into something, and we're starting with a blank page. So actually, for now, because we're writing HTML, I like keeping the design up instead of just looking at a blank page that has random text showing up. So I'm going to break this down into two pieces. The first thing we're going to have here is a main up at the top. And just in case you see me do something like that, where I do like, here is a class name, and then it turns into a div all on its own, I am using emit. So we have my main here, and I'm going to give this a class, mostly because I like giving everything class names. So in my CSS, I am mostly just worrying about or targeting class names just to keep specificity as even as possible. Now you'll see when I do write the CSS, I do break from that a little bit, but anyway, we'll see when I get there. All right, so what do we want to do now? We have our main, and then down here, I'm going to put this in its own section because it's extra information. This is my main content. And then just down here, I'm going to put this in a div. And actually, we should give that a name. So it'd be div class previous weather. Makes sense? Previous weather. There we go. So those are the two main, the two focal points that we'll be working on and styling up. Now, I think the more interesting one will definitely be here, where we have a lot of different things going on. So the very first thing I'm going to do is put in my h1. And like I said before, I like having classes on everything. So we'll call that main title. And I have this off screen, so I can just copy and paste it in. There we go. So that's the red text that's coming across the top there. It's not the most visually important one, but it is the title of what this is. This is the latest weather at Elysium Plantitia, I guess. I've never said it before. It's the first time I'm trying to read it. But that's what this is. This is literally the title of what this page is all about. So we have that. And then we have these different parts that we're going to be getting into. So we're going to have our a date section. or a date thing there, we're going to have a temperature. So temp, and last we're going to have wind. So date, temperature, and wind. So with Emmet here, if I push tab, boom, I get my 3 divs just like that. And I think the easiest are, looking at it from a logical standpoint, each one of these should have an H2 in it. So we're going to have an H2 of section title. And one thing you'll notice is I'm going to do, so sol 377 will be one of them, temperature will be one of them, and wind will be one of them. And you'll notice this one looks different from the other two. So I'm going to have my section title, and then I'm going to run in on this a section title date. So it's a modifier of my original one, and just, if I put each one on its own line so you can see it a little clearer. I have my section title and a section title date. So this is going to make sure they're all the right font weight, font everything, and then it'll look a lot like these two, and then I'll use the date just to pump up the size, but we'll see that when I get there. So even, let's just write in sol 377. Kyle will probably bring, taking all this out, but I do think it is. We sort of do need to put it in to start with. And after that, I'm going to bring in a paragraph. I'm going to give this a class of date day. I know I'm sort of breaking things up where my title has one thing and then my date day, like now it's more BEMI in a way. If you have a better suggestion, I would gladly take it. But generally for titles, I really like doing stuff like that. I guess I could have this as like paragraph and then paragraph day, date the same way I did that. But anyway, we'll leave it like that. Wow, I designed this back on December 18th. So we'll put that date in. Kyle will be changing it anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. December is a good one to, September. A long one is probably September. Even if we do that. A longer date, I've spelled it wrong though. September. In general, if you're building a template that needs to change, pick a long month, September, November, December. Don't choose like July, just because maybe July is going to fit. And then when you cycle through, once the JavaScript's working, and then the long dates don't actually fit in there. So like, even if it's September 31, so you're trying to make it as long as possible, it's usually a good idea. Next up, we have our temperature. So we have the 2 different pieces in here. We're going to do our H2, call it section title. And it's also going to be, you got to spell things right though, section title. So it's section title. And in this case, I don't think we're going to have to change it. So I'll just leave it as my section title like that. And that's also going to have a paragraph. In this case, actually, we need 2 different ones. And so I'm going to do 2 paragraphs. And actually, both of these paragraphs should have a class on them of reading. I don't know if reading is the right terminology. But I'm actually here. I've noticed that this is white and these are sort of grayed out. I'm going to probably make those a little bigger. There's alignment issues and stuff with my design. I did it pretty quickly. But I want to make this and those two probably the same type of hierarchy. So we have a title. The title will be similar, and then the reading itself will be similar. So I'm going to keep that as reading. I could call it temp reading, but in this case I don't want to, because again, I want this to be the same as that. So if I did temp reading, it would be a little bit messy. If I needed to, it's again, I could do like a reading temp, or we could play around with it, but I'm just going to call it reading like that. I do like BEM, but I think you do want to make sure you're doing things in ways that make sense and that you're not repeating the same code over and over and over again, which you could easily be doing if I did that as temp reading and then I did this as wind reading, and if the styles are exactly the same, I'm writing extra CSS for nothing. So I think we'll just leave it like that. Let me just quickly bring in the text. And again, one thing here, I did do double digits, and maybe this would be worth going up. If it got to negative 98, it's probably going to get into like negative, like bigger numbers. I'm assuming that's not the coldest ever day on Mars. So I will bring that in there too. And wow, it gets cold on Mars. Whoever are the people who volunteer to go there first, I'm not going to be one of them. That's for sure. Not just based on the temperature. There's a lot of other reasons I wouldn't want to go, but yeah, that's chilly. I think Mars is super cool. That's why one of the reasons I think this is a fun idea, but man, I wouldn't want to be there. So we have the high, the low. I think that's good. We don't have any special spans or anything. We don't have anything special we need to do with that, so we can move on to the wind. So for the wind here, we need to have, once again, my H2 of section title. And we're going to get into some fun things here because we have this wheel thingy that needs to point in a specific direction. And so I think this would be fun. I'm going to need to give, so we have the wind itself. We do need the paragraph with the class of reading once again. And in this case, that's 75 kilometers per hour. And now there's the fun bit, which is our little arrow here. And we can completely do this with CSS, which we're pretty much going to be doing. But there is one negative side to it is people, if you don't have, if you need a screen reader for whatever reason, you have no idea what the direction is. So let's build it out and make sure that we can do it. So we have, I'm going to do a, we're actually going to need another div for this. So I'm going to call it wind direction. So again, so this is like a subcomponent of my wind here, which is why I have the double underscore, which is part of BEM. If you don't like it, then you don't like it. You can do it differently. I'm not going to get into an argument with BEM right now. And in here, we need a couple of things. I'm going to have a paragraph, which is going to give, say, the actual direction. We're going to have, so we have our paragraph that's going to have the actual direction on it. We're also going to have we need an arrow. So we can call it wind arrow. And that's going to be our little pointer here. So the first one, the wind direction, is going to be the circle. And then the arrow on there will be pointing and, is this div right here, which is pretty much a decorative element. And on this paragraph, we're going to put in the actual direction. So I'm going to say 45 degrees for now. I don't know what the direction is at the moment, but we'll go 45 degrees. But we don't want people to see this. Visually speaking, it should just be pointing that way. We're going to give this a class of SR only, which will be for screen reader only. So that way, in our CSS, we can make it visually, nobody's going to see it. But when we're actually on the page, so if you need a screen reader, the screen reader will be able to get the direction. It can read it out to you, but visually speaking, we can just eyeball it with the direction this is pointing in. So there we go. I think that will do what we need for there. And so that's my wind. Oh, I forgot. We also need this block of text down here. So after my wind, we can add in a info. Our general information, it's going to need a couple of paragraphs. We have 2 paragraphs. And I'm going to actually bring this in really quickly. There we go. So that is all of that. And now the last thing we need is our toggle here. That's going to be a fun one, an interesting one, because I want to make that also as accessible as possible. So this is Kevin from the future coming in. You'll notice there's more HTML done here already. But when I got to this point, I was doing all the CSS and I realized I made a really big mistake here. I turned this into like a switch. You can do button type switch. And it worked functionally, but I was doing it to be as accessible as possible. And then I realized I wasn't being very accessible. The switch is really for like an on-off. And the more I was looking at it, I'm like, no, this isn't really an on-off switch. We're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit. It really should not be done like that. It should really be done using radio buttons because we're switching, we're not turning something on and off. So yeah, just so you know, once this little recording of the future part here where I do this, when you get to, when I get to this previous weather part, you'll see something completely different here. So I apologize for that, but I want to make sure that we're doing this with the best quality possible. So I'm going to be changing this now, but again, you might see something different later on. Once I get to the CSS, it actually switches about halfway through, but I'm not in my HTML too often there. But once we actually make it work in the CSS, it's all going to be using the new, this way that I'm doing it now. So I just apologize off the bat if there's any confusion or anything like that. But yeah, I think that makes it clear enough. I'm actually going to leave this here just because I want to copy and paste. Actually, we can leave that there completely. So for this, what I want to do is let's make this one a label first. So label 4. We'll call it cell for Celsius, and that'd be a close label. And we're gonna have a open label here with a close label. And this one will be for, is it Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit? I always do Far, but I think it's F-A-H-A, so Fahrenheit, something like that. Anyway, we'll stick with that. And what we're gonna do now is build in my inputs for that. So to be input, I like doing input like this. So it'd be a radio button. So the ID of this one will be cell. The name of it is going to be unit, because when you have radio buttons, you want to make sure you can toggle back and forth. So we'll need another input that we'll do right here. And actually, I'll copy this one and I'll paste that down here. And this one will be my FFA for Fahrenheit. The ID is there, and then the name will still be unit. So that is good. The last thing is I want one of them on by default, and I'm going to go with Celsius by default because I'm in Canada and that's what I understand and that's what I designed it all in. So I'll just put the checked attribute on here. So by default, that is coming in. And then in between these two, and it's kind of important where I put it. I guess I could actually put it down here as well and get this all to work. But I'm going to put it in the middle. I'm going to put a div. This is really a decorative div, which I'm usually not a fan of. We're going to give this a class of unit toggle. And this guy here is going to be the little icon that's in the middle. So I'm going to leave a comment here for Kyle saying when unit toggle is clicked, the checkbox needs to switch. Checkbox needs to change. Hopefully that's clear enough. So when somebody clicks on that, we need to also switch which one of these is checked. So he'll need a little function or something checking for that. You know what? It'd probably make more sense if this was a button, to be honest. So it is something that's going to be interactive. So instead of just a regular div, a button probably makes more sense. So we'll do it like that. So if somebody clicks on the button, it will switch which one of those is done. So there we go. That is it. So again, now we're about to go back to the past where I write the rest of this HTML. So this is going to be different when we get there. So apologies for that, but this is what we're going to be sticking with in our final build. So there we go. See you in the past, or is it back to the future? I'm not sure. Let's just keep going before this gets awkward. All right, cool. And then, so in here, I'm going to have a div of previous days. So this is going to be all of them. That's going to have display flex on it probably to get everything to go next to each other. And then in here, we're going to give this a, so we have previous days and then previous, I'm going to do day, just like that. So inside my previous day, so actually I should bring this back up so we can see what we're doing, and I'll zoom in on it. We want something that's going to look like that. So we're going to have our previous day. So we need that, all the same information we had up above. Well, most of it. We have the temperature and we have that. And we're going to have a more info button. So if somebody clicks on more info, it's going to repopulate the area up top with what we see here. So we can set this up. So previous day. So here we can give that an H3 of... okay, we'll do an H3 of previous day. I don't want to do day. So I'm just going to do sol. So, you know, sol. I'm not sure what it is. Sol, in this case, it'd be 371. We can have a paragraph underneath that. So that will be previous day. Now is where I could do day. We'll put date. Just to, you know, I don't like the previous day. Whoops. We want to put a dot at the front of that. Date like that. So again, we can do, what was it? September. I think we used September 31st. And then actually I'm going to come up to here just to steal that from there. Previous day. Oh, I did that as a div. I don't want that as a div. I want that as a paragraph. And then 2 more paragraphs. They're styled exactly the same. So in this case, I'm not going to have them as a reading. We can have these as previous day temp. Copy that. We could do like a high and low on there, but they're looking exactly the same. So I think just something like that will be perfectly fine. And actually, I'm going to turn word wrap off for a second, just to show you. It makes it a little cleaner to see, whoops, how this is being organized up. So we have my H3 of previous day sol at the top, my previous day date. So here, this December 12th, we have the 2 temperatures, and last but not least, we do need that button. So we're going to do button, we'll call it previous day more info. And in there, we can just write more info, just like that. So there is the HTML and the CSS. Now you will not have to wait long for the next video. The next one will be coming out tomorrow. And if you're watching this the day after or any other time that it has been released, you can get the rest of it. It's there now, so you might as well go and watch it. There will be 2 more parts to this one, just because the CSS, it takes a while to get through. So the next part of it's going to be the main structure, the big black box that we do. Actually, there would be 3 more. We're going to do the big black box. I'm going to have another video that's just for the little toggle switch to go Fahrenheit and Celsius. And then we'll have the last video, which is looking at the thing that comes up and down over on the bottom. And yeah, that's what we're going to be looking at. I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked this one. I hope you're looking forward to the next few videos. If you are looking forward to those ones and you haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you're already subscribed and you're watching this and you're enjoying it, make sure to tell other people about it. That would be a fantastic way to help out this channel. I know a lot of you are already doing that. You're going and getting other people, letting other people know about this place, and I really, really appreciate it. But if you haven't done that, it could be a nice way to support my channel. Thank you very much for watching. A big thank you to my patrons for helping support everything I do here. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.